You think the silver sitting in your locker belongs to you? On January 14th, 2026, a presidential proclamation was signed that shattered that illusion forever. The U.S. government has quietly designated silver as critical infrastructure. What does that mean? It means your silver is no longer just a precious metal. It's now a national security asset. And history proves that when something gets labeled national security, ordinary citizens lose their ownership rights fast. Remember 1933, when President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102 and forced every American citizen to surrender their gold to the government in exchange for just $20.67 per ounce? Those who refused faced 10 years in federal prison, yes, a decade behind bars, for the crime of keeping their own gold. And today, 93 years later, the same story is being rewritten. But this time, it's not gold in the crosshairs. It's silver. I'm not telling you a conspiracy theory. I'm going to show you Section 232 and the USGS list that mainstream media is hiding from you. Because what's happening right now isn't speculation. It's already law. And most people have no idea their property rights just evaporated overnight. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the government is terrified of a silver shortage, why they're preparing to seize private supplies, and most importantly, the 3 critical steps you need to take right now to protect what's yours before it's too late. But first, let me show you why they chose silver, and why this metal has become more dangerous to own than even gold ever was. So why silver? Why now? And why is the government treating it like a weapon of war? The answer is simple but devastating. Silver is the new oil. Just like the 1970s, when the world ground to a halt without oil, in 2026, the modern world is completely paralyzed without silver. Let me prove it to you with hard numbers. Every AI chip being manufactured by NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel requires silver for thermal conductivity and electrical connections. Without silver, there is no artificial intelligence revolution. The entire tech boom stops. Every solar panel installed across America uses 20 grams of silver. The U.S. installed 32 gigawatts of solar capacity in 2025. That consumed 8,400 tons of silver in 1 year. And solar deployment is accelerating at 28% annually. Every electric vehicle rolling off the Tesla, Ford, and GM production lines uses 25 to 50 grams of silver in electrical contacts and charging systems. EV production hit 19 million units globally in 2025. That's 950 tons of silver consumed just for cars. Every Patriot missile system defending U.S. military bases uses silver-cadmium batteries. Every F-35 fighter jet has over 400 pounds of silver in its wiring, avionics, and electrical systems. Every satellite orbiting Earth relies on silver-coated components that can't be replaced with cheaper alternatives. Add it all up, you get a nightmare scenario. Industrial demand for silver is now 680 million ounces per year. That's over 21,000 tons. But here's the problem. Global silver mine production in 2025 was only 830 million ounces. And it's been flat or declining for 5 consecutive years. This is the 5th year in a row that the world has run a structural deficit. We're consuming more silver than we're mining, every single year. So where's the extra silver coming from? Above ground stockpiles, inventories, vaults that are being drained dry. COMEX silver inventories have collapsed from 370 million ounces in 2021 to just 238 million ounces in January 2026. That's a 36% decline in 5 years. London Metal Exchange inventories are down 30%. Shanghai vaults are down 54%. The global buffer is vanishing. And here's the terrifying part. There is no substitute for silver. Some people say, why don't they just use copper or aluminum? Because those materials don't work. Silver has the highest electrical conductivity of any metal on Earth. It has the highest thermal conductivity. It has unique reflective properties that are irreplaceable in solar panels and precision optics. You can replace oil with solar power. You can replace coal with natural gas. But you cannot replace silver in the technologies that define the 21st century. That's why the government is panicking. Because without silver, America's defense systems go offline. Its AI infrastructure collapses. Its clean energy transition dies. And its military superiority evaporates. Silver isn't a luxury anymore, it's a survival resource. And when a resource becomes critical to survival, governments don't ask nicely, they take. Which brings us to the smoking gun. What the government is doing right now while you're distracted by stock markets and political theater. On January 15th, 2026, President Donald Trump signed an executive order that barely made the news. It was buried under headlines about tariffs and immigration. But this order is the most dangerous thing he's signed since taking office. The order invokes Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. What is Section 232? It's a Cold War-era law that allows the president to restrict imports, control exports, and requisition private supplies of any material deemed essential to national defense. It was originally written for things like uranium and titanium, strategic materials needed for nuclear weapons and fighter jets. Materials so critical that the government reserves the right to seize them from private citizens if national security demands it. And as of January 15th, 2026, silver is now on that list. Here's what that means in practice. If the U.S. declares a silver supply emergency, the government can legally ban silver exports to prevent domestic shortages, force mining companies to sell silver to the government at mandated prices, requisition silver from private vaults, ETF holdings, and even personal collections, prosecute anyone who hoards silver in defiance of federal mandates. This isn't theory. This is written into U.S. Code Title 50, Chapter 55. It's already law. They just activated it for silver. But why now? Why the sudden urgency? Because America imports over 70% of the silver it consumes. And the two largest foreign suppliers, Mexico and Peru, are both heavily influenced by China through Belt and Road Initiative investments. China has spent the last decade quietly securing ownership stakes in Latin American silver mines. As of 2025, Chinese companies control or have majority stakes in 42% of Peru's silver production and 38% of Mexico has. And on January 1st, 2026, China implemented strict export controls on refined silver. They're not selling to the West anymore. They're stockpiling. So the U.S. is now facing a terrifying reality. We don't control our own silver supply. Our adversaries do. That's why the Strategic Silver Reserve Program was quietly launched in late 2025. The goal? Accumulate 120 million ounces by 2028. That is nearly 4,000 tons of silver that the government is pulling out of global markets. When governments hoard, physical supply disappears, premiums explode, delivery times stretch to months, and private citizens get priced out or locked out entirely. But here's the part that should terrify every silver holder. This is not about securing supply for future needs. This is about control. Because once silver is classified as critical infrastructure under Section 232, the government can declare a national emergency at any time and confiscate private holdings, just like they did with gold in 1933. The legal framework is already in place, the justification is already written. All they need is a crisis, a supply shock, a war, a cyber attack on the power grid that requires massive silver stockpiles for emergency repairs. And when that crisis comes, your silver won't be yours anymore. It will be temporarily requisitioned for the national interest, and you'll be compensated at whatever price the government decides is fair. Now you might be thinking, but silver prices are soaring. Isn't that a good thing for holders? That's what they want you to think. But the truth is much darker, and it's already playing out in the markets right now. Silver is trading at $91 per ounce as of January 17th, 2026. That's up 285% from 2 years ago. Analysts at Bank of America are projecting $150 to $180 by year end. Goldman Sachs raised their target to $125. Independent researchers are talking about $200, $300, even $500 if the supply crisis intensifies. So everyone's celebrating, right? Silver bulls are finally vindicated after years of manipulation and suppression. Not so fast. Because here's the trap you need to understand. The government will never allow a critical infrastructure asset to trade freely in a supply crisis. Think about it. If silver hits $300 per ounce, what happens to the cost of solar panels? They become unaffordable. What happens to EV production? It grinds to a halt. What happens to military procurement costs? The defense budget explodes. The government cannot allow that. So they won't. Here's what they'll do instead. They'll implement price controls and trading restrictions. In December 2025, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission held closed-door meetings with COMEX officials. No public minutes were released. But according to leaked sources reported by Bloomberg on December 28th, they discussed emergency position limits and circuit breakers for critical commodity markets. Translation: they're preparing to freeze silver futures trading if prices spike too violently. They're preparing to impose maximum price limits on physical silver transactions. They're preparing to declare silver a controlled commodity, where sales require government approval. This has happened before. In 1971, President Nixon imposed price and wage controls across the entire economy to combat inflation. For 90 days, it was illegal to raise prices or wages without federal permission. The controls failed spectacularly, but they stayed in place for over 2 years. If silver becomes too expensive, they'll do it again. They'll cap the price. They'll ration supply. They'll force sellers to prioritize government and industrial buyers over private investors. And here's the worst part. Paper silver will be sacrificed first. If you own silver through ETFs like SLV or SIVR, you don't own physical metal. You own a claim on metal held in vaults. But those vaults are the first targets for government requisitioning. In a declared emergency, the government can seize ETF silver holdings and compensate shareholders at the official controlled price. You might own 1,000 ounces on paper, But when you try to redeem it, you'll be told the metal has been requisitioned and you'll receive a cash settlement at $50 per ounce, even if the black market price is $400. This isn't conspiracy. This is exactly what happened during World War II with strategic metals like copper and aluminum. The government seized industrial stockpiles, set maximum prices, and rationed supply. Private holders were wiped out. So here's the critical question. Are you holding real silver or just a paper promise that can be broken the moment the government declares an emergency? Because if you're betting on $300 silver to make you rich, you need to understand that the government will change the rules before they let that happen. They'll cap prices. They'll seize supplies. They'll control the market. But there is a way to protect yourself, a way to hold silver that makes it much harder for them to confiscate. And I'm going to show you exactly how in the next section. But first, let me show you the 3 things you absolutely must do right now if you want to survive what's coming. If you've watched this far, you understand the threat. Now let me give you the survival strategy. There are 3 critical steps you need to take immediately to protect your silver from government seizure and market manipulation. Step 1, physical silver only. No paper. If you own silver ETFs, mining stocks, or futures contracts, you need to understand you own nothing. Paper silver is a claim, not an asset. And in a supply crisis, claims get overridden by government mandates. In March 2023, the UK Financial Conduct Authority published new rules allowing ETF sponsors to suspend redemptions in extraordinary market conditions. Translation: when you want your metal most, they can refuse to give it to you. SLV, the largest silver ETF, holds approximately 480 million ounces, but there are millions of shareholders. If even 10% demand physical delivery simultaneously, the fund collapses. They don't have the logistical capacity to deliver that much metal. And in a declared emergency, the government doesn't need to confiscate your ETF shares. They just confiscate the vault. Your shares become worthless paper while the physical metal gets shipped to defense contractors. So rule number 1, sell all paper silver. Buy only physical bars and coins. Step 2, private storage, never bank vaults. A lot of people think storing silver in a bank-safe deposit box is secure. It's not. In 1933, when Roosevelt confiscated gold, bank vaults were the first places they searched. Banks were ordered to inventory safe deposit boxes and report gold holdings to federal authorities. In 2015, Greece imposed capital controls during their debt crisis. Citizens were locked out of safe deposit boxes for weeks. They couldn't access their own property. In 2021, the FBI raided a private vault company in Beverly Hills called U.S. Private Vaults. They seized over $86 million in cash, gold, and silver from 1,400 safe deposit boxes. Many owners were never charged with crimes. Their assets were simply taken under civil asset forfeiture laws. The message is clear. If your silver is in a bank or institutional vault, it can be seized without warning. So where should you store it? Private, undisclosed locations, your home, a hidden safe, buried on private property, places where only you know the location. Yes, there are risks, theft, fire, flooding, but those risks are far smaller than the certainty of government confiscation during a declared emergency. Step 3, diversification. Beyond silver. Silver is critical, but it's not the only asset you should hold. If the government declares silver a controlled commodity, you need backup assets they can't easily confiscate or control. Gold is still valuable, though it's less industrially critical than silver, which makes it slightly less likely to be seized in a defense emergency. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency offer digital portability and decentralization, but governments can and will restrict on-off ramps and exchanges during crises. Physical real estate can't be confiscated easily, though property taxes can be weaponized to force sales. Arable farmland produces food, which becomes the ultimate currency in severe economic collapse. The key is not putting all your wealth in one asset class. Spread your risk. Hold silver, but also hold other tangible assets that can't be erased with a keystroke. And one final critical point. Tell no one what you own. The biggest mistake silver holders make is bragging about their stack, posting photos on social media, telling friends and family, creating a public record of what they possess. In 1933, the government knew who owned gold because people had declared it on tax returns and insurance policies. Those records were used to target confiscation. Today, data collection is 1,000 times more sophisticated. Every purchase you make with a credit card is tracked. Every online transaction is logged. Every social media post is archived. If you buy silver with a traceable payment method, the government already knows. But if you buy with cash from private dealers and never document the transaction, there's no record, no trail, no way for them to prove what you own. Operational security is your final defense. Buy quietly, store privately, and never ever tell anyone what you have. Now let me bring this all together with the final warning you need to hear. The reset has already begun. Silver is no longer jewelry. It's no longer just an investment hedge. It's a geopolitical weapon. On January 14th, 2026, the U.S. government reclassified silver as critical infrastructure under Section 232. That wasn't a symbolic gesture. That was the legal framework for confiscation. They're not going to announce it on the news. They're not going to give you advance warning. When the supply crisis reaches critical mass, when China cuts off exports completely, when defense contractors are screaming for silver they can't source, the government will act. They'll declare a national emergency. They'll invoke wartime powers. They'll seize private silver for the duration of the crisis. And just like in 1933, they'll compensate you at a government-mandated price that's a fraction of the true market value. You'll get a check for $50 per ounce while the black market price is $400, and you'll have no legal recourse. This isn't fear-mongering. This is historical precedent. It happened with gold. It happened with strategic metals during World War II. It happened with oil during the 1970s price controls. And it's happening with silver right now, but you still have time. The window is closing, but it hasn't shut yet. Here's what you need to do today. 1. Convert paper silver to physical. Sell your ETFs. Cash out your mining stocks. Buy bars and coins with untraceable cash. 2. Store privately. Get your silver out of bank vaults and institutional storage. Hide it where only you know. 3. Diversify smartly. Don't put everything in silver. Spread your wealth across gold, crypto, real estate, and other tangible assets. 4. Maintain operational security. Stop posting about your holdings. Stop telling people what you own. Disappear from the government's radar. And most importantly, act now. Because the one thing history proves is that when the government decides to seize an asset, they don't give you months of advance notice. They do it overnight. And by the time you realize what happened, it's already too late. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think the government will confiscate private silver holdings? Comment yes if you believe seizure is coming. Comment no if you think I'm being paranoid. And comment already hidden if you've already moved your silver to private storage. Let's see where this community stands. Because the conversation they don't want us having is exactly the conversation we need to have right now. If you want to know which other critical minerals are next on the government's hoarding list, subscribe to this channel. My next video will expose the entire critical infrastructure list and show you which commodities are about to explode in price before they get locked down. Silver is just the beginning. The resource wars have started, and most people don't even know the battlefield exists. The government is hoarding. The question is, are you prepared?